Who is this car?
This is vintage vintage culture. Sans Paris. All right, let's jump into this. We've got work to do. Um, Today we are going to talk about scope boxes and match lines. And the reason that I wanted to mention this is because it's coming up on a Oxford Farms, and we've used it before, but there's some actually things that I've learned about this when trying to expand upon what a view reference or what a scope box can do, how we use a match line, and how we can better coordinate drawings between those things. So to start off, when you create a scope box, there's a few things. Let me jump to 3D for you to see this. So a scope box is essentially a section box in Revit where like if I were to like, hey, if I wanted to click this thing and like do a section box, it would like isolate that thing, and I'm just like pressing the selection box or the BX command, and it shrinks that down. Now I can turn that off in this view and be able to say like, I just want to see the model again. But the scope box is better for us defining where the scope of the actual drawing is. So in this case, we have an L building, and we want to be able to show that there are essentially like two different scopes of the drawing. So we have like an overall level 1, which let me come up to here. Here's your overall, and there's your overall building. But then uh, we want to be able to say like one wing is the A wing and one wing is the B wing, and that is then documented in our sheet like this. So there's your A wing and here's your B wing. Now, this is great. You could be like, you could do this with the crop region and just duplicate the view and like crop it down. Now, that is fine. And that is a course that we have gone in the past. What I'm talking about here is going to be kind of like something we could innovate on and how we could work better at having sort of one drawing that then can show us two different things in terms of we can have what we call a dependent view. And what I've done here is I went and duplicated the view with as a dependent. And when we duplicate a view as a dependent, it gives us this sort of cascading parent-child relationship here. And what's great about this is that I when I'm working in this view, if I write, I can't speak this morning. Let's just say I want to put in text and say here, this is, I can write this here. Now, if we know things about Revit, views created tags are only seen in that view. I can't go to level 2 and see that view, that same tag or that same text. The same with like if I copied a view, like I'm making the tag in that specific view. Now, the cool thing about a dependent view is that it's already there. And so it's not here because of the scope box, but if I can come here and change the scope box to say, hey, this is actually 3A, I can move it and then that tag is there or that text is there. Um, so there's a lot of cool things that we can do where we can uh, begin to use these things as a, hey, I have one floor plan that I document from, and everything is I can see the overall and I can kind of work from that. But then people showing up late, um, people can work from this overall view, but then what we are documenting is also being picked up in the dependent 3A and 3B. So while I can like tag and dimension this whole building from one floor plan, I can also like make them a dependent view from that. And so the scope box is really a way that we can say, hey, I can draw a box that is a scope box. And so it's here. I can't draw it in this view because I'm not in a view that supports drawing a scope box. But when you click on a scope box, it has a name to it, and it also has a height to it. So we can say like, hey, this scope is only for level 1, or this scope is for the whole building, and all that. And all you do in a view is just set what the scope box is, and it will like move the crop region to that scope box. So in this case, if I'm here and I have my scope boxes turned off, because sometimes they can muddy the drawing because you're seeing a bunch of stuff overlapping. And I'm going to come here, I'm going to go to annotation, scope boxes, and turn those on. Okay, so this is the 3B scope box, and this is the 3A scope box. And so I can then change this to be something else if we changed what the actual scope of this drawing was. But then there's this thing what we use called a match line. And for those of you who are not familiar with what a match line is, it's like, hey, I've got this, I'm cutting the building into two, and I need to put one on one page and one on another page, and I need to be able to see that line of where it like overlaps. And this is not just a line, it is actually called a match line. And it is a terribly shown thing because it's this tiny button up here called a match line. And when you do that, it like pops up the checkbox window and you can pick a line or you can draw the line and it comes through as pink and all that. So I've already got one here showing that. And you can see I have a top constraint and a bottom constraint. So this is one line that will exist on each floor and the roof to be able to show me that that's the overlap of the two scope boxes. And so the thing that is really helpful with this is that like I'm not having to recreate that line and make sure it lines up every time. It's one line that I drew to say like this is where the scope boxes overlap. And then I can pin it in place so that way like nobody comes in here and moves it and is like, why'd someone move the scope or the match line? Because while you did draw it, like it can move if it's not pinned. So very cool feature, match line and scope boxes. Does anyone have any kind of questions about how a scope box works and a match line?
Is there a specific command or location you would go to find it, or is it something that has to be loaded into the project?
No, these are loaded in. These, if you were using them from the template, is something I noticed when I was working in Oxford Farms was I needed to adjust the thickness to make sure that like a match line is typically a very thick Sharpie-like line to show like it's a visible key to be like there's more to the building down here, but I don't need to, I'm not showing it to you. And it just, so if I were to turn on thick lines, it's like super thick, and we're just trying to be like, hey, I'm just telling you the building ends here in this drawing, but there's more down here. Now, we have used these on previous jobs like Everly, and you have the same kind of like match line documentation. This is where like we're really starting to talk about the how Revit can be helpful to us. Now, this match line text is just text. What we can do now is we can actually use this what's called a view reference to be able to refer to what the other side of the match line where that is. Okay, so while you could imagine if you have got 3 stories and you've got 2 sides of each building, so that in a sense you have 6 drawings that you have to say match line, match line, match line, match line. You're really not telling the contractor where that other drawing is, right? You're just kind of being like, it's a match line, go find it somewhere else. And we're relying on them to understand the drawing. And sometimes we are designing our drawings around the lowest common denominator. So we need to be explicit about how we tell them where that drawing is, so that we don't get a call being like, where's this drawing? And it's like, dude, did you not read the drawing? So one of the cool things beyond just having text like this is wanting to be able to say like, see drawing 1 on sheet A113. Now this is not text. This is actually what we refer to as a view reference. And in this case, these are terribly organized. I can put it, if I were to say see drawing 1 on A113, see drawing 1 on A113B, it's telling me on this side of the match line, I can go to A113B. On the top side of the match line, I can go to A113.1A. Okay. Now, this is when I go to view, I can click this view reference, and it, because it's a dependent view and it has dependencies from the main view, it's already picking up like a view type like related views. And then I can say like, well, I have these, there's the main drawing, and then I have the 2 dependent views under that. And so what's helpful with that is like when I come into here, if I didn't have this on a sheet, this would not be populated. So if I come down here to A113A, and let me just remove this from the sheet, it's going to disappear. Okay, you see like all I did was and this view reference is looking for the detail number and the sheet number, and I have a tag that is saying see drawing blank on sheet blank. So when I then come back here and say like, well, actually I do want that drawing on there, let me open this up, and then I'm going to come back and drag this on. And then I go back to my overall, it populated. So I'm not having to write that text. All I'm doing is tagging the view reference and saying, hey, on this side of the match line, I want you to go to this view. On this side of the match line, go to this view. And this is really helpful because a lot of times, especially as we grow into larger buildings, or code allows us to have these like L or longer buildings that we do have to cut because it doesn't fit on the sheet. This can allow us to not have to be like, well, just say match line. Well, then match line doesn't tell us what is it, what are we going to. And you can use this in elevations, you can use this in floor plans. And it's just a really helpful tool to be able to like segment the building and to be able to show like certain pieces of it without having to go deeper and be like, well, I'm using text because it doesn't have the ability to, that would make it, if you wrote that 6 times, it might not seem big, but if it moved, you are not coordinating how it moved, or the sheet number changed. Like this is all picking up that information of where the view lives and how it's being applied throughout the drawing set. So that's kind of the gist of scope boxes, match lines, and view references. Does anyone have any questions about how that kind of works, or any comments about how we could begin to use this better?
These view references, whenever we print sets out, do they live link to the sheets that they go to? Like if I'm on like this sheet and it says A113 1A, if in a PDF, can we click on that? Will it take us to that sheet?
Yes, it will take you to the sheet. It is like a Bluebeam like live link
Like
that it
live
is
link, yeah.
referencing that thing. So
So
it's
that is a
super
huge
helpful.
advantage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, it's like we create visual documentation for how to construct the building. And the better we can make a drawing set be easily user friendly, that they can click on stuff and they can move around, and it really expands our ability to convey what the design intent is without it getting muddied in like, well, I don't know how to just like where you to organize this and all that. So again, it's clarity and trying to be better at understanding the coordination between these drawings. I will say the one downfall that I noticed with this was that when I changed the scale of the dependent view, it's changing the scale of the parent view. And so a lot of y'all will notice that we have a scale next to our drawings. This might be a situation where we want to uncheck the scale from that template, so that way we can control them independently and say like, hey, the parent is a 16th, but then the child is 3/32. So that is one of the things. But in terms of overall coordination, you could have 3 floor plans with your dependent views as your scope boxes, and then really you only have to have like a slab edge and then a roof plan. So there's just a lot of like, you're having a lot of benefit to not having to duplicate and redo this all over again. So like again, if I tag this wall here and I tag this wall here, and then I go to this floor plan, it's already picking that up. So I can only have to work from one floor plan and it's picking up in both areas. Now this is where you can get into, hey, I have an annotation crop, or I like can change my scope box, and where those kind of like, and it's finicky because of where the match line wants to live and how we want to be able to document across the match line. So in this case, there's a like portal between the two buildings, from the sort of street side to the parking lot side, and this became the like known location of where the match line would be. So there's a lot of coordination within the project team of where the match line exists, and then how far we need to show over that. But in Joe's case in Everly, he just used a break line and then said that's where the match line is. So that's okay too, but being able to use the view reference to say like, hey, that if you're wanting to find this drawing that's not on the page, you can use a view reference to say reference that and be like, it's over here. Go look at A112.5, which then takes you to the other side of the building over here. But we could have just been documenting one floor plan and then we're picking it up in both places.
It also worked in that other plan just because it was one building on one project instead of like 4 buildings on a project, where I think it'd be even more helpful to have what you're talking about as the reference view.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so it's really just, as we do more things, there's going to be times where like even I'm learning, hey, we could do it this way, and we can begin to like have better coordination for as we print, as we coordinate with contractors, that we're trying to make it easier for us to navigate a PDF. It's easier to navigate in Procore, all that. So that's kind of it for today. Hope you all learned something.
Go to the
Parting comment at the end,
elevations too.
guys. I know I sound redundant in some of these, but it just comes from lots and lots of scar tissue. Keep it really simple and try and figure out where your scope boxes need to be or how you're petitioning your plans as early as you can in the project. Cartoon out your sets and then make sure that you're talking to your PMs and even your team leads just to make sure the sets are reading correctly. I've opened up so many different files and found like hundreds of scope boxes because when you start linking them into unit files and things like that, and then you deploy them across a bigger development, it can get really cumbersome to manage. So just be really strategic about how you use some of these tools. I think they're great tools. Just again, just talk with Kurt, talk with myself and Joe and Frank, and your PMs, just to make sure that you're keeping it as lean and as simple as we can.
If you
Okay.
really wanted to, and you wanted to, like, we could begin to say, like, hey, there's a scope box work set, and then we can better manage those across the whole drawing and through the whole project. So that way, I don't know if you all have seen like our site models sometimes, but it's like one of the things that I like to do to have better clarity, I'll turn off my levels and share levels and grids, and then I'll turn off my scope boxes. And that way I can just better see the building and not see the lines that are like used for coordination. Because there's benefit to, hey, we need this to be able to make better drawings. And then we also want to see the nice, pretty picture and be able to understand the, the whole composition as one. So again, think about how you use it both as like a visualization tool as well as an architectural design tool. So all good comments. That's it, y'all. See you at 10.
Thanks, Kurt.
Thank you.
That's
Mhm.
great.
Thank you.